born to kill it. I was meant to win. I am down and willing, so I will find a way. It took a minute, now it didn't happen right away. When it get hot in the kitchen, you decide to stay. That's how it winners made. Stick a fork in the hater on my dinner plate. I walk into the fire like it's just a bit of flame. I switch my style up, push the money pile up. I'ma get rich with life.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Clydesdale Media Podcast, where tonight we have none other than the EMOM man, the Southland man, Brandon Luckett. What's going on, brother?
Not too much, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, excited to have you on here. Heard so much about you. The circle of people I hang out with seem to hang out with you, but this is the first time we've ever got to talk.
Yeah, dude, I've seen all your stuff, and I've been wondering whenever you're going to have me on. So thank you so much for finally inviting me.
Yeah. So Corey Leonard's already in the chat.
Of course.
I'm interviewing the Burgers again tomorrow evening.
Oh, gosh. My favorite family.
So, yeah, we're going all Southland today and tomorrow.
Love it.
So let's talk about that first, the Southland group. How did that come about? Just a bunch of fit dudes wanting to get together and hang out?
So, I don't know if you're too familiar with, my past, but I grew up in Louisiana. I grew up in Baton Rouge, went to high school there, went to LSU through undergrad, but I moved away and went to Houston for 2 years for graduate school, and then went to Oklahoma for 2 years to get to do my residency. And then in 2021, I moved back home, and that was after my last CrossFit Games as an individual, and kind of decided to kind of back away from competing and just kind of focus on, learning to run the business with my father that he and I run together now. And it was a lot on my plate. And so I kind of backed away from competing. But while I was here in the first few months, 2 separate gym owners had reached out to me, and they hadn't talked to each other about anything about me, putting on some kind of camp at their gym. And so I was like, well, y'all both reached out to me separately. I think it'd be really cool if we put on a 3-day continuous camp where, we got some high level competitors to come in and help coach and run it, but we just invite anyone to come and learn and be in the environment of the community. We all love the competitive community, and the competitive community of CrossFit is kind of special in that, I think a lot of us are pretty open to giving advice and what works for us and what didn't and whatnot. And so we kind of just put plans together and did our first one in the winter of 21 or 22. And then we've kind of done a summer or fall, kind of in August, and then another in December, January, February, every year since then. And it's grown, and we've gotten a little bit better at it. We've got a little bit more value added into it. And it's just cool to do, we try to provide a lot for the campers in terms of, things that they can keep, apparel, gifts, and things like that. And then we try to provide a ton of value. We have nutritionists and mindset coaches come in. We have, Shelby Neal and Alexis Johnson, Scott Tetler, as many athletes as we can get in there. Come on, just come and just share as much as you can with us. And let's all throw down together for 3 days.
So where I first heard of it was I documented Rudy Burger's Open in 2023. They had just got back from the winter one.
Yes, sir.
And they were telling me what an amazing group of people it was, and how cool it was to hang out with everybody. And that if I ever had the opportunity, I needed to come down and document what goes on at one of those camps. Absolutely.
Yeah. Actually, Lynette, she started helping us run them the last winter one we did in 2024. So probably in February or January this year, she came and helped run the whole thing with me. And so we have a little small team of people who organize it, do orders and whatnot, order the stuff and the food, make the schedule and everything. And she was a big part of that this year. And dude, her 2 kids and Rudy are just the best. Love them.
Yeah. The story they brought back this year was Leah got her first muscle up.
Yeah.
Because of the Southland camp, and the girl is helping her, Shelby and Alexis helping her out with the muscle up.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, super cool. I I want to rewind because you went through a lot of the beginning of your story, like really fast.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Louisiana. What made you want to be a medical physicist, and what is that?
Yeah, so I'll start off with like kind of defining it in pretty simple terms. It's not that complicated. Um, we simply work with radiation in medicine. Um, the physics side of it is like the atomic, nuclear physics, the radiation side of it. The medical is how it's used in medical practice. And there's three different kind of divisions that you can kind of like broad classify them as. And then like that's radiation therapy, where you're treating illness with radiation. There is nuclear medicine, where there's treatment and diagnosis using like radioactive traced metabolic agents, so like maybe like glucose or something like that, so that it's taken up in the muscles, and you can image, muscular function with that. But then there's also diagnostic imaging, which is the I would say like the simplest of the three fields, which is X-rays, ultrasound, MRI, mammography, MRI, or CTs. So we work in diagnostic imaging and nuclear medicine. We wear several different hats, from QA in terms of like quality assurance, making sure that the systems are running as they're meant to run within regulations of like the state and federal government. We work as like a liaison between the hospital and the governing bodies. We do a little bit of construction in terms of like calculating how much lead is needed in walls to block radiation from passing through the walls to the adjacent rooms. We are radiation safety officers in terms of like making sure employees are safe. We do calculations for fetal doses. Like we wear a bunch of different hats, but it's all centered around radiation and medicine.
And you do this with your father?
Yes, sir. So that's how I got into it.
So so is he a medical physicist as well, and you just followed in the footsteps?
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. So he
Okay.
got into it like real early, got a master's in nuclear science. I had to go a little bit more of a formal route as they kind of standardized the field, a couple decades later. So I had to get a degree in physics, had to get a master's in medical physics, and then had to get a residency, a 2-year residency after my master's, so that I'd be eligible for board certification so that I could go and practice. But yeah, the only reason I did it was because my dad did it, loved his job, and just wanted to be like him,
So it sounds like there's a lot of calculations and like formulas. So do you have a deep math background?
Yeah, I probably could have gotten a math major in undergrad, and physics is inherently math oriented. Math is, I mean, you can go theoretical with math, but in terms of physics, most of it's very much applied to how things actually function, and a lot of this can be kind of mapped through mathematical equations. And so, like, if you've ever interviewed like Alexis Johnson, she's the math PhD. I'm a physics master's. They're kind of the same thing, just applied differently.
Yeah, that was my next question. You guys were teammates last year.
Mhm.
Does any of that come into play in strategy, or is competition a completely different animal?
So I would argue that Alexis Johnson's brain works much more on the mathematical side than mine does. I wouldn't say I'm like exactly gifted, and my brain doesn't work quite, just flawed, like just, naturally in that realm. I'm more of like a broad scope individual and not very detail oriented. And so when it comes to strategizing, I kind of play by feel and experience, and not so much by like, you know, looking at the details of the numbers and the paces and like this is what I need to do to attain this. I kind of have learned over the years just based off of feel and heart.
Yeah. And then, so we're going to bounce all over the place just because that's how my brain works, right?
Same.
So, so last year at semis, I was there in Pasadena. You were with your Franco's team, and that was one of the most epic team battles I've ever witnessed in person.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
It was pretty much a 3-way tie for that weekend. You guys ended up winning that overall.
Yes, sir.
What, being a part of something that tight and that epic. Do you feel that on the weekend? And when it's done, is there a different feeling than just like a normal comp?
Yeah, absolutely, and especially with team. There are two completely different feelings after success as a team, like with a team versus as an individual. And I've been on like both sides of that. Um, and winning on a team, especially when like the race is that tight and like, kind of that feel like all that pressure as an individual on your team. Like when the team succeeds, like it's it's very exciting and like you're stoked for your team and like you I would say like so like the way I explain it with team versus individual is that like on an individual basis, when you win and you have success, you have a lot of pride in what you've done, but like the excitement is very minimal actually. On the team side of things, whenever you have success, your excitement is almost tenfold, but like your individual proudness is kind of minimized because like there's three other people that had to do their job as well. And so you're more proud of like your teammates and you're excited with your team. And so like it's completely different dynamic in terms of like how you feel post competition because like the excitement with team is magnified.
The way you guys jumped on each other at the end of that competition, knowing you pulled off the win, the euphoria was, I mean, it was palpable in that arena at that time.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite memories from competition last year.
Yeah. It was definitely memorable. Like I remember running to that worm and then crossing the finish line. Like, dude, those other teams were on our tails. And like I think we were actually like not winning that event going into that last set of squats or burpees. And so when you just see your teammates pull through and like, you know, exceed all expectations, like it's amazing. It's awesome.
Yeah. So your other teammates, Logan and Shaylin,
Hmm.
are they different? You and Alexis have this analytical brain. Shaylin's a law enforcement officer,
Hmm.
FBI agent, like would run through a wall,
Oh, 100%.
right? And then you have Logan. Like, what are their personalities in comparison to you guys?
Yeah. Man, Alexis and Shaylin were like this duo of just energy. Like joking all the time, like laughing all the time, loud, um, almost like almost to the point of like obnoxious, just like their energy was so high. And then Logan is like so quiet and chill. And then I'm just like somewhere in the middle of those two groups. But I think it was like a great balance because like we worked really well together. Um, I think as a whole, Shaylin and Logan and myself, I think we were like a gritty team as a whole. Alexis by far had the most analytical brain, but like I think we were all just so willing to suffer for each other, and that made the season really fun.
The perception of Logan is, and I have a best friend that is like this when we compete. Tell me where to be, and I'll be there, and I got you.
100%.
Yeah, that's the perception he gives off.
Yeah, and he's an insane competitor as well. Like he's just been in the sport for so long, and I think his experience is so high, and he's like his depth of talent is massive. It's like I mean he shows up on game day and he's just ready to go.
So the big question is, what the hell happened at the games?
I don't think we ever told anybody what happened at the games. Um, Alexis either had flu or COVID. Was extremely sick. And I mean, we didn't tell anybody because it didn't really matter. Like we had to go compete. But like she was on Dayquil, she was on NyQuil, she was on a Z pack, like trying to get through this. Like I walked into their room and she's in a sweater and sweatpants and the heater is on.
Wow.
Like, yeah, she was bad off and like her attitude through the whole weekend was just amazing. And on top of that, in one of our events, she had like I mean, she tweaked with like her shoulder and was struggling on like muscle ups and then like every event after that. And so, I mean, it was probably from the fatigue of being sick where she was just, fighting for dear life the whole weekend. But I remember on the first event, which was the ski legless rope climb and overhead squat event, she and I were partners on the synchronized overhead squats. And dude, I remember on the first set of overhead squats, just like looking into her eyes, and they were big. Her face was pale, like her lips were like blue and white. And I was like, oh no, like this is gonna be such a long weekend for her. But dude, like she had so much heart and just fought the whole weekend that like, I mean, I couldn't have been more proud.
So let me ask this question. Your team suffers through a weekend like that, right?
Mhm.
With someone who's willing to like fight through all of that, does that make you closer as a team?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's less so about like the result at the end of the weekend and more so about like what you see your friends lay out on the floor, dude. Like, I mean, we could have taken a top 5, and if any of our teammates hadn't put their heart and soul out on the field, like you would have been a little bit disappointed. But we took it like a 12th or 11th or something, and the team fought so damn hard. It's like, dude, you couldn't be more proud.
Yeah, because after seeing you guys at West Coast or whatever it was called that year, like, I thought you guys were poised to fight for the podium.
Yeah, I think we would have had a shot, but you know, the events are structured in a way that like weaknesses are showed, and you know, take one teammate who's fighting, vomiting and you know, fevers and everything, and just aches and chills, and you should do your best, man.
Yeah. I don't know what other sports you watch, but I've been watching the Olympic trials, and those people fight for one a shot every 4 years.
Yeah,
And like to trip in an 800 meter and to lose your shot at the Olympics because of a trip. Like
that's wild.
it's so brutal. Sports are brutal.
Yeah, yeah. You learn a lot about your character as an individual if you pay attention to it through sports, for sure.
Yeah. So speaking of sports, we're going to go back again. Any sports growing up?
Yeah. The biggest sport that I played or participated in rather, was wrestling, for 8 years, from 5th grade all the way through high school. And that was like, once I got into high school and got pretty serious with it, like that was everything I thought about. I did run cross country as a freshman, quit that to just focus on wrestling. My senior year, I got pulled into the swim team like midway through the season, so I swam for half a season. But other than that, dude, I just wanted to be on the mat.
It's funny because one of the first interviews I ever did was Chris Spieler, and
Yep.
he said that wrestling puts you in positions where you have to suffer, and get out or find a way out or just live in that pain,
Mm-hmm.
and that helped him so much in his CrossFit career.
Yeah, 100%. I think wrestling's a unique sport when you look at it as a whole, and you don't have to look at just like a single wrestling match, which is extremely humbling. You can't blame anybody, right? Like, and it's such like a gritty sport because you're legitimately like hand-on-hand combat, more or less. You're not throwing like kicks and punches or anything, but you're like hand-on-hand combat with another individual. It's just you two. And the mental battles you play with yourself of like when like the going gets tough, like do you want to quit or do you want to like fight, or when you're down on points, like are you going to fight through the last round, or are you going to give up and like just let the guy take it? You can let him embarrass you, or are you going to pick yourself up? So like take that out of it, which is like a huge part of it, but the discipline you go through in terms of like cutting weight, which is massive. To go to bed hungry is really hard. To cut water weight for 24 hours before a weigh-in, and like your mouth's dry and you're in a sauna and you're barely sweating anymore because your body's just kind of got nothing left. You can't sleep at night because your body's, the hormones are so out of whack. And you got to go, you go weigh in. It's like, and you're watching what you're eating for 6 months. Like that kind of mental discipline translates over into everything after it massively. Um, and so like the mental side of it is just, if you like dive into it and like you're a mentally tough human, like it translates over all over. And I think that's really cool about wrestling.
Yeah, I don't think there's any kind of mistake that some of the best CrossFitters are wrestlers and gymnasts, because
Yeah.
both are forced to cut weight, both are forced to suffer through things, and it just proves that you're capable of doing hard things
Yeah.
on any given day.
I think that like you can extrapolate that to sports where you don't have to be a talented human to succeed. So like there is a level of talent and athleticism in sports such as like baseball, basketball, even like football, where like I wouldn't succeed at those sports because I'm not an extremely athletic or coordinated human. But like take wrestling and like you emphasize your strengths as an athlete and minimize your weaknesses as an athlete, just like we do in CrossFit. And so like in wrestling, I wasn't the fastest or the most powerful or the strongest guy, but I had flexibility, I had an engine, and I had like a grittiness about me where like I just kind of never gave up, and I made myself successful on the mat. And like I think sports like that where you can take like an not necessarily most talented human and create like an insane athlete, I think those are super cool sports.
Yeah, and those are the athletes I appreciate the most. That's the athlete I was. I was that guy that, like, I was a swimmer. I did other sports growing up, but swimming was my main sport.
Mhm.
And I would get private lessons, and the coach would be like, "Man, you have all the heart and all the work ethic. If you just had the talent of X,
Yeah.
you would be awesome. You'd be an Olympian." I always got that like told to me, but you don't, and so you're probably not.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, then there is a level in all sports of gift and talent for sure. Um, but I love the athletes who just work their asses off. I don't care how talented you are, dude. I want to see you just suffer through it, put the
yeah,
work in. I love that.
yeah. I think that's why like Colton Mertens is so popular, right?
Dude, I love him. I love his mindset. I love his vibe, like and what he like kind of stands for. I think he's one of the most incredible athletes, dude.
And another wrestler.
Yep.
Yep. So there is a really big correlation there. So was it always LSU for you growing up in Louisiana,
In terms of like loyalty to sports,
or going to school there?
no. Honestly, I wasn't the best student in high school. Uh, like I wasn't going to get a scholarship anywhere on academics. My brother went to Tulane. He was an incredibly intelligent human. He actually just finished his fellowship in ocular plastics as a surgeon. So he's finally moving home after 16 years postgraduate.
Wow.
Like, but uh, I wanted to go to Tulane to be like my brother, and I got waitlisted there. Probably only waitlisted one because he went there, and two because I lived in Louisiana, and so like I ended up going to LSU on like in-state tuition just because honestly in high school I had no ambitions to be an academic, um, and I wasn't a great student, and so it just was LSU.
And then it clicked in college where academics became more important.
Mm-hmm.
And
100%.
then you went to Oklahoma next, or Houston?
Houston. Yeah.
Houston.
So, yeah, in high school, I wasn't a great student. I loved wrestling and focused on that, which is, I say like I only thought about LSU. Like there were some colleges who wanted me to go wrestle, but looking past college and wanting to be a physicist, like whenever I made that decision, I was like, there's no doing wrestling and getting a degree in physics. Like those aren't gonna pan out together. Especially the way that like I just kind of was obsessed with wrestling. And so after wrestling in high school, after state, like the season was over, I just went and did a few out of season tournaments just to like burn myself out and like overtrain for them, crush myself and like burn myself out. And so I was okay like putting that sport away. And like that summer, like I had made the decision, like just to switch the effort that I'd put into sports in high school to pour all of that effort into academics. And so, like that summer, I went to physics camp at LSU for like a couple weeks. Like I had tutors every semester. I studied with all of the smartest kids in class. Like I didn't party, I didn't drink, I never went to the bars. Like I didn't do any of that. I did CrossFit at a local affiliate, started coaching there, and I studied for 4 years. And I would say like in high school, I was like a low 3.0 student. And I graduated in physics at LSU, which has an insane physics program with like a 3.85. And then went to MD Anderson in Houston, which is the top 1 and 2 schools for medical physics in the world. So like I definitely switched my mental state there and of what I poured myself into.
Yeah. It's so funny. I can relate to that. You did better in high school than I did. I was like a 2.6, 2.7 guy, and then end up graduating 3.6 with my undergrad and 3.8 masters, I think.
Yeah. I mean, dude,
it clicked in college.
It's not that like you just started retaining information better. It's like you just put in more time and like more effort. You're like, oh, like if I can put in the time, like I'll make the changes, and the work ends up paying off most of the time. Not always, but most of the time.
Your buddy Corey says, physics camp, what a nerd.
He already knows I'm a nerd, dude. He talks to me all the time. He knows I'm a nerd.
And then just a couple comments. Kipping it reels in here. Sucking on an ice cube, PTSD as a wrestler.
Yeah, dude, cutting weight, sucking on an ice cube just to not have a dry mouth, a cotton mouth.
And then Corey says, I do Brandon's programming, can confirm he loves to watch us suffer.
Dude, when it comes to programming, I'm almost more on the side of I like the mental suffering of difficult training pieces. And that's not to say like you should beat yourself up every day, but like whenever you can tell your body to just keep moving, it translates over into competition pretty massively, I think.
Yeah. So we're going to get into that in a second because I want to talk about EMOM in more depth. But so you graduate and you said you found CrossFit at LSU.
Mm-hmm. Not at LSU, but while I was going to school.
Okay. Yeah. So that's where you started. Did you ever think you were going to compete in that? And when did the competition bug start?
So it's funny. Well, I got into CrossFit because of my brother. He was doing CrossFit in college with his roommate, Chad Becknell. And when I was wrestling, he would come home to visit, and he would like make me do some metcons for wrestling. And like I remember like they would hurt pretty bad, doing like wall balls and burpees and stuff. And then after wrestling, like there was a couple month period where I was just kind of exercising just aimlessly. I'd always exercised on my own. Like I loved running, I loved calisthenics and stuff like that. And he brought me over to do a CrossFit class at Red Stick CrossFit in Baton Rouge. And it was kettlebells and double unders, which I couldn't do double unders, of course. And it was like the whole vibe of like the energy of a CrossFit class was like, dude, I was hooked. Because it was like that competition feel. And like after, like I was spent, I was sweaty, I was like out of breath. Like I got beat by like everyone in the class, and I was like, I was pretty fit. And I was like, dude, I love this. I'll never compete, but I'm gonna come do classes.
You'll never compete, is what you said.
Yeah. I mean, dude, like whenever I made the decision to stop wrestling, I was like, all right, competition's out. Like it's all school and work, and like that's what I'm doing. So I was like, I'm just gonna do CrossFit to stay fit. And like it fed that competitive bug that I needed. And that next year, I'm pretty sure I went to regionals on a team. And so for a few years, I was on regionals as a team. And in 2017, I went to regionals for the first time as an individual.
And a year later, you made the games.
Yes, sir.
So you make it to the games. I don't know. They only hit, was it 48 back then? 40. I
think it
can't
was
remember.
40. It was 40.
40. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And you finished 36. So not the ideal finish at the games.
No.
Did that give you a chip that you wanted to do better, or how did that feel after that?
Man, that's a loaded question with everything that was going on with me that year.
Okay.
So I would say like the immediate feeling like after the games was like, dude, I was so upset. And it's so crazy to say because like going into that year, I was like, all I want to do is qualify for the games. Like that is my dream. I want to qualify once and just like say I made it. And like I don't care if I come in last. Like I just want to be there. And then you go and qualify and you come in like, second to last. Because I think only 38 people finished the games that year. And so really I was like third to last. And like you're comparing yourself to all those people, you're like, wow, I did terribly. When you're the top 40 in the world, you compare yourself to the top 40 and you're like, dude, that like I was so upset and I was like, I'm gonna be back. Like I'm gonna make this different. I want to come like actually have some success. And then, a week later I take boards for medical physics. A week after that, I take my finals for my summer classes. Failed my boards, had stomach ulcers for a couple months just from stress. Tried training, like I felt terrible in the gym. And I was like, F this. Like, I'm so done with competing. Because like I told myself I would never let CrossFit get in the way of my work, of my school. And here it is, like I failed boards. And so I was like, screw it. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. Took the year off, passed my boards again, like took them again like a few months later, which was totally luck because there was some issue with the testing system. And usually I would have had to wait a whole year, but I got to take them in December that year instead of waiting until August again. Passed them, got into residency and moved to Oklahoma. And I was like, okay, like everything panned out and it's okay. But I still had no idea of like competing again until Alexis Johnson pulled me back in.
It's funny you say that because I was listening to a podcast today with Missy Franklin and Katie Hoff, who are Olympic swimmers, and how they both feel like they never met their expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Missy Franklin, who won 5 Olympic gold medals, doesn't feel like she met the expectations she was meant for.
Yeah.
We are stupid human beings. Like 5 Olympic gold medals and it didn't meet your expectations. So you feel like your career is a failure.
Yeah.
I
think that's the danger of setting expectations on results.
Yeah, I think that's a great statement.
I don't think the goal should be the result. I think the goal should be to pour everything you have into the task that you are doing. And everything you have may not be 12 hours of dedicated time per day. It may be 4 hours a day. It may be an hour, maybe 30 minutes. And if you have expectations of winning, or qualifying for the CrossFit Games with the ability to train 1 hour a day, your expectations are results based. However, the best you can do with an hour a day may not be qualifying for the CrossFit Games. And so like, yeah, results based expectations are a dangerous game in my opinion.
Yeah. It just coincided with your story, but Alexis brings you back in after this tumultuous time from the games, the ulcers. Did the ulcers go away? Did you need any extra help with that? Did they just?
Yeah, I had to take some like medication to kind of deal with that. Like I started graying in my hair. Dude, like the stress I had from that was pretty unreal. I dealt with pretty bad stress and anxiety for quite a long time. And like it manifested itself physically in a lot of different ways, from stomach ulcers to, graying hair, which 29, I got quite a lot of gray, to high blood pressure. Like, dude, all these different physical manifestations of stress and anxiety. But
that's crazy because you're one of the fittest people in the world.
with high blood pressure. I took
High blood
medication for a year.
Yeah,
It's
stress
wild.
is an evil monster.
Yeah, but I think that that's also mitigated by like a lot of internal work. You can get through that for sure. So if anyone out there is dealing with stress and anxiety, you can do a lot of work internally, get through that, and like the physical manifestations kind of start fading away, which is pretty dope.
Yeah. So back to Alexis. She
Yep.
sucks you back in like
Sorry.
the mafia.
Yeah. So she texted me in September of 2019, said, "Hey, we're going team. Start training." And that year, like the open was in October. And I was like, I got time. Why not? Like team's a little different. I don't have to train quite as much. The pressure's not as crazy. So I started training again, did the open, had my best ever open finish, which I think is partially because a lot of the high level competitors had just competed at the games and were not in like getting back into training yet. So I finished in like 13th or something in the world. And then we went to put a team together, went and competed in Argentina at the South Fit Challenge or something in Buenos Aires. We won, so we qualified for the games, and then COVID happened. So no teams went to go compete, but they pulled the top 20 from the open to go individual. Bless you.
Thank you.
So I got to compete as an individual that year based off of my open score.
Okay. Yeah, and they eliminated teams altogether.
Yep.
Was there any hope, like when Rich was going to run the comp at Mayhem, or were you guys holding out hope that would still happen?
Yeah.
And then as everything kind of went away, then you had to fall back into the individual at your own gym.
Yep.
So now you're back in individual. You finished 23rd in 2020. And what made you sign up again for 2021?
I had fun with it. I think I had a little bit more fun with it that year. Obviously a better performance. I was like, okay, like 23rd was better than 36th. It was a good time to do it because I was still just in residency. So like my schedule was super fixed. So like I knew that like outside of my responsibilities, I could make training happen. And I just gave it another rip for another year before moving home. Because I kind of figured, moving home, I'd have to like kind of put the shoes away and focus on work. And so, yeah, I just stuck with it for another year.
So that 21 year, you make the games again. You get to go in person.
Mm-hmm.
And you finish 27th.
Mm-hmm.
Any anxiety or anything from that?
Yeah, so that was I was actually pretty happy with that performance based off of the injury that I went into it with. So 2021 semis, we had the snatch ladder at the West Coast Classic in Las Vegas. The first rep at 265, I tore my UCL in my right arm. So like that little tendon just came straight off the bone. I didn't finish the event. Like I went off the floor and I was like, dude, I don't know what I did.
I remember that now that you say that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Couldn't like
that
every
was the
event.
First event of the weekend.
Yeah. So I had 4 more events after that. It was kind of, it's pretty scary. Like, I mean, I couldn't front rack a empty barbell, much less 95 pounds for thrusters, because bending my elbow was pretty painful. I couldn't do any rope climbs in a warm up because it hurt to hang on the rope. But then you're like, all right, I'll go see what I can do on this event. If I have to come off the floor again, it's fine, but I'll at least give it a go. Did well in that event. Next day we started with a ruck, so it didn't not too much there to be worried about. But the chipper with
117 degrees was something to worry about. It may have taken your mind off the UCL for a moment.
Yeah, but it's just it's like at each event is like, all right, we're gonna take this event and see what happens. Ended up qualifying, but training after that, you're not gonna like train with the same kind of effort attitude that you had in competition. So like I didn't snatch, I I couldn't front squat. I couldn't really back squat. Not heavy, because holding the barbell on my back, like getting my arm into that position hurt too bad. Couldn't overhead. Like, so many things were just out of the question. And so, like, going into the games, it was just like I hadn't touched so many things in so long that, to finish 27th, I was pretty actually happy with.
It's funny how the memories are flooding back now of you going through that moment, because I was there and I remember you like getting helped off the floor.
Yeah.
And I had forgot all of that until you just rekindled that story, and bam, there it is.
Yes, sir.
Wow. So you make it to the game. Yeah, 27th is great. You survived.
Yeah.
And is that after that games, is that when you started to become washed up?
Yep. Yeah. Moved back home. Wasn't competing. My dad had gotten really sick. He got COVID at the games. Was on oxygen. Like, I had to move home from Oklahoma earlier than I was supposed to start covering work that was getting pushed off because he couldn't do anything. And so, like, I was done training, done competing. Kind of lost. Didn't want to do any kind of training where, like, I might see someone else's scores and feel bad about myself, which is, pretty, not a great mindset to have. Like, I was just comparing myself to everybody else all the time, which is a terrible mindset to live in. But yeah, like, it was pretty, like, I was pretty sad, like, losing that side of my life, and didn't really know how to channel that energy or, that mindset, until I started the EMOM Company. Really.
So there's that, and the Southland group all happened kind of at that same time.
Yeah.
And gave you a community again.
It did.
So let's talk EMOM before we get to this year. So you start this company, and it's designed for people who don't have, like, all day to train.
Yeah, that's what we founded it off of, because that's where I was. I started training again. I would just go on, like, a 2-mile run in the morning before I went to work, or I'd try to do a Metcon in the afternoon, and I was just, like, comparing myself to people all the time. And then I just started doing, as weird as it is, 30-minute EMOMs, where, like, I didn't have to compare myself to anybody else. I just compared myself against the clock. Like, did I finish the workout or not? And they were insanely effective. Like, I mean, you could do pretty low output work for 30 minutes, and at the end of 30 minutes, like, you've done a ton of work. It's just a longer time domain than we're used to. And I actually started feeling like I was getting in shape again, and, like, my mental state was better, just because, like, I was doing something for myself again and, like, not comparing myself to everybody else. And yeah, it clicked for me. And so I started the Instagram account and was just putting up workouts for other people to follow. I was like, if this was working for me, maybe it'll work for other people. So we just started throwing out workouts on Instagram, and it grew slowly at first. And, like, I never intended to sell it. I didn't want to sell it. I just wanted to give people some value that I found for myself. And I didn't want to be responsible for having to write us, like, any kind of program for people. Like, I didn't feel like I had the time or the bandwidth, and just didn't want to. But it got to the point where we had enough people asking for daily workouts instead of, just the 1 or 2 or 3 a week that I was posting. And I was like, okay, well, maybe we can try it out and see if we get, 25 members or something. And so my brother-in-law and I kind of put the plan together and started putting it on Train Heroic. And we started with just, like, the 30-minute workout, in the garage and out in under an hour. And that was our mainstay program. We still have that as, like, and that is our most popular program. But it branched out, into a 90-minute program, a competitive program, endurance and stuff. So we offer a lot more now, but our mainstay is still the 30-minute session.
Well, I know a lot of people who are doing it now. My nutrition coach is doing it. Corey talks about it all the time. One of my other co-hosts is dabbling with it a little bit. It's funny because the gym I go to, it's not exclusively this, but they do a lot of interval work,
Mm-hmm.
which is essentially like EMOM. It's just EMOM 4 or EMOM
Yeah.
3 or whatever. And it brought a lot of fun back to working out for me.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
And my gym's owned by Christy Aramo O'Connell.
Yeah.
So that's what they do there. And I think it translates for the competitive athlete as well. You see Ariel, that's what she's doing now almost exclusively. Because you have to suffer to beat the time clock, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it translates to competition.
Yeah, and I love it because it's also like almost internalized competition.
Yeah.
You like it's like you against the clock, man. You against your head, and like I love that so much.
So if people are interested, they can just find you on Instagram. I know that.
Mm-hmm.
EMOM Company.
Yes,
It's
sir.
EMOM Co, right?
The EMOM Company.
EMOM
Yep.
Company. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And you're easy to find out as well on Instagram.
Yes, sir.
They can reach out that way. And you have a website as well.
Yes, sir.
So there's that. Now I want to get to this year real quick because you were washed up. You're doing your own thing. John Young says there's no way. What brought about the shirt?
Honestly, whenever John Young called me washed up, dude, I had no intentions of competing as an individual. I was maybe going to try to put a team together, but the idea of competing as an individual actually legitimately scared me. And it's like sad to say that, like, again, like I was just comparing myself to everybody else, and like the fear of putting in like the time and the energy and going to compete and missing my expectation, my results based expectation, scared the crap out of me. Like what would people think about, like if I failed, or I don't want to feel like a failure, and like all this awful mindset that I had. But something along the lines kind of switched, and I was like, I don't really care, what the results end up being. I just kind of want to see like what I'm capable of this year. And so the washed up shirt was more of just like a little bit of a reminder, that like who where I was a year ago didn't really matter. Where I was going really didn't matter either. It's like it didn't like I didn't care if anyone called me washed up. Like that don't mean anything to me, dude. It's like maybe I am, but I'm gonna go see what I got, and if I fail, so what? Like on Wednesday, I go back to work, And so I had to put away a lot of fear and like that mindset, just like constant comparison game. And for the first time, I did it because I wanted to see what I was physically, mentally, and spiritually capable of, and not just to, maybe my dad will be proud of me if I qualify for the games, or, maybe my brother will be proud of me, or, people will think that like I'm good at CrossFit if I do well at this. Like none of that matters. And that's where I was for a while.
So during the season, you're killing the open, you're killing quarterfinals. Is that like a slow build to like you want to see what you can do, but it's almost like hurry up and wait?
Yeah, it was unexpected. The open performance was totally unexpected. The quarterfinals performance was totally unexpected. And we've been talking about results-based expectations. Like I had none. And so my only expectation was like, I want to see how much I can suffer on this event. Like I want to see what I can do. I want to try to optimize it. And so like I took all of that expectation of whatever out. And like, as the season went on, I had more and more questions of like, oh dude, like you're going to qualify, or like, what do you want to like, where you want to place at semis, or, you're going to go to the games, or all this stuff. And I was like, dude, I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about the training session I have today, the training session I have tomorrow, thinking about, what I can do today. And like, whenever I get to the competition floor, I'm not going to think about like what it's like all I can do on the competition floor is absolutely throttle down on optimizing every event for myself. I cannot control how fast the people in the lane next to me move. And there are so many insane athletes and so many variables that like, yes, I am capable of qualifying, but I have zero expectations of qualifying because I can't control that. All I can control is like what's going on right now inside my body and mind. And so that's all I focused on every single event. And yeah, it was stressful, but it worked.
So for the first time, you go to semis and you look across the way and there's Scott Tetlow and Bill Leahy and Max Krieg and all these dudes that like come hang out at your camp.
Mm-hmm.
Did that make the experience different this year?
Yeah. It was cool to see so many people from our community out there. And like very close friends. And like whenever we first started the camp, it was like, you know, I said we were doing this because a rising tide lifts all ships. Like if Scott Tetlow and Bill Leahy and Max Krieg get better and we're all training together, odds are that I'm going to get better as well. And so like I'm not going to hide the things that have worked for me, and they're not going to hide the things that have worked for them in terms of training and mindset and philosophy. Like we're going to share all that stuff, and we're going to see how good we can get. And I think the results of like our tiny little region like speak for themselves.
Yeah, Louisiana is now the hotbed for men's CrossFitters.
I mean, dude, we had like over 10% of the competitors in the field were from our little town.
Yeah, Pacific Northwest and Louisiana.
Yeah.
Those are like the two hotbeds right now. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So you get there. Was there ever a point in the weekend you felt comfortable that you were going to make the games, or it went all the way up right till they announced your name?
Yeah, dude, it was so stressful. Like I had to repeat to myself so much that like the results are out of my hands. Like I've got to do what I can and just like let go of like what might happen. And I never felt like I was in a position, because like going into the last event, I think I was in 8th place and I was only a 20 something points ahead of 9th and 20 something more points ahead of 10th. So if you make a mistake on that last event, and
which it proved could make people make mistakes.
Yeah. Like Cole Grieshaber was a place ahead of me and then ended up in 9th. Like that could have been me ending up in 10th or 11th. And so like I knew that like I had to be really smart and still had to really perform on this event and just let the chips kind of fall where they would.
So you make the games. Now, how do you keep the mindset when you get to Fort Worth, which actually isn't a big trip for you now, right? Is it? Like
No,
6.5
hours. So we're going to drive up there.
When you get to Fort Worth, how do you keep that it's not about the results?
Yeah. So I think in years past with training, you know, once you qualify for the games, it's like, oh, like I've got to do all this extra volume and all this extra lifting and all this extra. And this year's the first year I'm kind of like more listening and like trusting what I've been doing and like listening to myself, like my body and mind, and letting that kind of tell me where to go. And yes, like the things have changed in terms of like what I'm doing, you know, a little bit more running, a little bit more cycling, you know, different skills that we wouldn't see in semis, quarters, or the open. So like just making sure I'm like touched up on those things, but not trying to worry about like, you know, I see all these other people doing these crazy workouts. I got to do something crazy like that. Cause like in years past, I think every year I've gone to the games, I've just showed up like adrenally fatigued and beat up and burn out. And, cause I'm like, I got to do I got to do more than everybody else. Like, that's kind of silly. Like what you were doing before worked pretty well. And so like, try not to change that too much. And then once you get out there, it's, another like experience that like I've had is like, you think you're superhuman all of a sudden at the games, and like you kind of throw out like all the things that you learned through the year, and like, okay, like everything's that I've done that's worked has got to change. So like now I got to like go out hotter, be faster. And it's like, yeah, dude, the field's a lot faster. It's a lot different than it was, but like you're not Superman now, you know, you're not you didn't build some insane engine you didn't have before. You're not stronger than you've ever been. You know, you still have to know yourself. So you still have to run the race that you know like you should run, and you can't worry so much about what people in the lane next to you are doing. Like that still holds true.
So Friday Night Lights has been announced. Excited about that because that's kind of like home field advantage for you. You train in the heat and the humidity of Louisiana. It's not that different than Texas.
Mm-hmm.
You ready to go outside?
Yeah, I'm excited that they're doing some outdoor stuff. I was hoping they would put some stuff outside. Although I figured that like if they did venture out, it would have to be morning or night. Otherwise, there would be a serious like safety issue. Putting people throttling down 100%, redlining in 105-degree weather, there'd be some pretty serious injuries. And I think you would get pretty bad performance out of the athletes. So I think it's cool that they're doing that in the stadium at night. Yeah, I want to see what they give us.
I think the coolest part is it's a 19,000 seat stadium. It's free to the public.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Like if it's packed, that is going to
That'd
be
be
like one of
sick.
the biggest crowds that CrossFit has performed in front of.
Yeah, that'd be dope.
Yeah. So I'm so stoked for that one. I know it's going to be hot out there, even for the spectator, but man,
Yeah.
that's going to be a good one. So we're coming up on the hour. So I want to finish up this afternoon. You got to participate in Around the Whiteboard with Peter White and Bobby Pods and Wads.
Yes, sir.
And spoiler alert, if you don't know who won, plug your ears for about 5 seconds because this dude won. I've done that show. I've been in that seat that you're in. What was it like being on there?
It was fun, dude. He sent me like the questions that he was going to ask last night. I was like, bro, I got no idea about any of this. And so I was like, all right, like, let me kind of see what's up, kind of learn about it a little bit. I mean, I had some ideas of some of the other questions. They're a little bit more intuitive and whatnot. And if you I had a decent idea of like what had been happening, but honestly, like I don't watch a ton of media with CrossFit. I don't read a lot. And so I was a little bit out of the loop. So I had to jump in the loop real quick, make some phone calls and like get some scoop. So yeah, I was not expecting to win that and have to go back in a few weeks.
Yeah, so I ended up winning 2 matches. I made it to the finals of my quarter and ended up losing to Colton by a half a point in the finals. But I guess I'll behind the curtain. When he sends me the questions, so Carolyn Prevost is my co-host. I've got another co-host, Jamie. I send them the questions. I'm like, guys, any ideas? And then we kind of like, and Carolyn was on the show as well. And then we just kind of brainstorm together how to kind of come up with answers.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it has to be kind of like coming from you.
Mm-hmm.
You have to like feel it in order to get the points.
Yeah.
But at least they can like get the mind rolling if you're stuck on something. Because I had to do it almost 3 weeks in a row, the way my episode, and the stress of that was, it didn't go to ulcer level, but it was rough.
Yeah, I was a little bit nervous going into that. I was like, dude, I don't know if I'm good at debating people at all. So like it went well. I'm glad.
I mean, we debate stuff on our talk shows, but like I was so nervous on that because you're not in control and you have 60 seconds.
Yeah, that's the hard part, is making a point in 60 seconds and being coherent and, getting your point across. That was sketchy.
You sounded so laid back and I looked at the clock and I'm like, he has plenty of time. Like, that's what I should have done, is just taking my time. 60 seconds is longer than you think, but the 20 goes super fast.
The 20, yeah, it's there and it's gone.
Yeah. Like I got muted a couple times on the 20. But yeah, it was fun watching you, and you'll be on in a couple weeks, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. We'll see what questions he's got for me now.
I wonder if because the 1 week we missed because he had a kid, like his wife went into labor.
Yep.
So they had to postpone that. But with the games coming up, he's gonna have a hard time filling slots, I'm guessing, as they get closer to the games.
Yeah. I almost didn't train today because of just things that I had to, like, doctor's appointments and podcasts. So I mean, obviously that one earlier and this one did like now. I forgot about the doctor's appointment. I was like, man, I don't know if I have time to train today. But it
30-minute EMOM. I hear it works great.
that's what I did.
There you
Working
go.
out is great.
Awesome. Well,
Yes,
Brandon,
sir.
this has been a blast. I mean, I think I could talk to you for another hour, but we got the history out of the way now. So next time you're on, we can just dive into stuff. But it has been awesome having you on. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so
Good
much. I
luck at the
appreciate it.
games. We'll be down there. We'll be rooting you on.
Yes, sir. Can't wait to meet you in person this time.
Yeah, awesome.
Yes,
Have
sir.
a great one, man.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody in the chat for being here. We'll see everybody next time on the Clydesdale Media Podcast. Bye, guys.